everybody. Welcome to the Board of Education regularly scheduled meeting. Has this meeting been properly noticed?
Yes, it has.
Can you please call the roll?
Harlan?
Here.
Eliason? Evans?
Here.
Garner?
Here.
Herzog?
Here.
Olmsted?
Here.
Peschel?
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay, we will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by two students from Merrill Elementary School. Whenever you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much.
Oh, I better make sure my
Have the rest of your summer.
ringer's on.
Yeah, no.
And thank you to the mom principal who
Yes.
made sure she still had two students that would come to do our
I thought the two really have students. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we go into board administrative reports. I do have a quick report. The TIF committee, the Joint Review Board met about the granary TIF. It had already gone through City Council, and so we just, dotted the i's and crossed the t's. Essentially, the background very quickly is that that building has been vacant for about 10 years. It's been sitting there, and it is truly a blighted area. The project is estimated at about $1.6 million, and we would have to forgo about $360,000 over, 20-some years. So that's the impact on the school district. Superintendent's report.
Sure. Well, thank you. This evening for the superintendent's good news for June 14th, 2017. First of all, Oshkosh West High School's creative writing class, students spent 8 weeks working on an 83-page anthology of student writing. Students had the opportunity to have hands-on experience in the writing process. They toured Steiner Printing and partnered with them to learn about what a writer experience was and when creating a publication. And we have received copies of that report. Emmeline Cook Elementary School students recently worked with spray paint artist Stefan Freeman, a self-taught spray painting artist who shared story and demonstrated his techniques in allowing students to spray paint a planet scene. Freeman planted a buddy bench that would be kept at Emmeline Cook. Thank you to the SOAR and Emmeline Cook PTO who made this opportunity possible. Congratulations also to Oshkosh West High School for being recognized for the 2015-16 school year as a Level 3 Advanced Placement Pacesetter School, which is given to schools with impressive levels of student access to advanced placement courses and excellent in advanced placement exams. Congratulations to Oshkosh North High School for being named in the U.S. News and World Report as one of America's best high schools. Oaklawn Elementary School received a nice thank you card from one of the neighbors who showed appreciation to the students for their May Day baskets they created and delivered. Students learned how this small gesture could make a huge impact on someone. And a nice thank you note that's included. Congratulations to Washington Elementary School for receiving the UWO 2017 Cooperating School Award for their school's willingness to work with UWO cooperating teachers. Congratulations to Oshkosh West High School's Brett Chester, who had been chosen from a large pool of Fox Valley student candidates for the youth apprenticeship with Bemis Company as a member of the finance team, where he will be able to use his accounting skills and allow him to gain knowledge and work experience for a potential career field. Oshkosh North High School's Tech Ed and marketing students unveiled the newest design of a working grill, which was made to look like the first Oshkosh Corporation vehicle produced in honor of Oshkosh Corporation's 100th anniversary. This was a part of Project Grill, which stands for Growing Readiness in Learning and Leading in an Educational Partnership with the high school and area manufacturing that provides students with an excellent opportunity to use those skills such as design, budgeting, welding, assembly, and marketing, learning from actual teams at Oshkosh Corporation. And a very special thanks to Oshkosh Corporation for including our students so very well in that project. On Friday, May 26th, Perry Tippler Middle School participated in the International Mix It Up Day, where each student was given a flag from a different country, and they entered the cafeteria and they marched the flag to the table setting. Students then joined others at the table who they don't typically sit with at lunch and read facts about that country, as well as sampled a variety of foods thanks to the community partners, including Olive Garden, China One, South of the Border, McGreedy Artisan Bread Company. You can kind of well imagine what foods were represented by those businesses. South Park 8th grade students displayed their talents while having fun at playing Kalahari Music Festival in Wisconsin Dells. And South Park Middle School students participated in reading of the name ceremony on Memorial Day, where students names of those students who lost lives in World War II, Vietnam and Korea, were read. Students were also led in the Pledge of Allegiance and played taps. 7th grade students at South Park learned about the journey of a hero that last quarter of the school year. They wrote a children's book about the journey and real-life everyday hero. They read the books to 2nd grade students at Shapiro STEM Academy. South Park students learned about teen activism and received and visited with Cole Stoffel, an Appleton Middle School student who is working to make a difference in the lives of pediatric cancer patients through the Cancer Crusade obstacle course, in which will take place on July 29th at Appleton High School. Take a moment to click on this event. This will be posted, of course, within the next day or two to see a documentary video about this inspiring project. Oshkosh North communities students displayed their growth of the past year through some of the events, which included a spaghetti dinner, the food and toy drive, and being a Washington Elementary School pal. 19 Carl Traeger teachers started off their summer by attending the University of Milwaukee Summer Sparks Conference, where 10 of those teachers showcased their implementation from last year. Many topics were covered, some of which include flexible seating, identity projects, global read aloud, and many more. Lakeside had many events at the end of the school year, some of which include the PTO field day, a fairy tale, puppet play. They received a new sign which was constructed by a parent, and 5th graders made the items for Market Day. And pictured here are the 1st grade students who are on a field trip with the gardens, which are part of Growing Oshkosh, which we're celebrating across the district. And Oaklawn Elementary 4th and 5th grade students learned about an artist who creates temporary sculptures out of materials in nature, such as nests, flowers, pine cones, and leaves. Congratulations also to Ned Rout, Oshkosh West High School junior, who qualified for the WIAA Boys State Tennis Tournament, where he placed 3rd in Division I singles bracket. Congratulations to Nick Baker of Oshkosh West High School for being named High School Academic All-Star honoree. Students must meet criteria including a cumulative GPA of at least 3.25, be a sophomore, junior, or senior, and participate at least in 75% of the varsity matches. Congratulations also go to Oshkosh West High School athletes who competed in the WIAA Boys and Girls Track and Field Meet on June 2nd and 3rd. Listed here are the students who advanced to this level, and the events in which they participated. And lastly, you'll have the superintendent's calendar for the last 2-week period. which actually became a 3-week period because of the uniqueness of the school calendar, or the calendar. So with that, completes the superintendent's report for this meeting.
Thank you. Are there any other reports from committee chairs? Yep, Charles?
The Policy and Governance Committee met on June 1st, and present were board members Bob Peschel and Barb Herzog, along with Stan Mack and Sue Schnorr. We reviewed 30 policies that day. 2 we had brought forth as a board, and then there were quite a few from Neola, our consultant. I'm going to give you an overview rather than read 2 full pages, single-spaced tonight. I'm sure you'll all appreciate that. There were 18 recommendations for policies to go forward to the board at the June 28th board meeting, and then there were another dozen or so that we had some questions on. In several instances, there was a note on the policy that the recommendation was there, or the recommendation was there to implement something because of legal standing, but there wasn't a referent point or a reference to that, so we asked that be addressed. Tomorrow morning, we're meeting again at 8 o'clock to address the other 14 policy recommendations from Neola that we did not get to on June 1st. We'll be looking at policies dealing with homeless students, children and youth in foster care, emergency medical authorization, student and parent rights, borrowing, prevailing wage coordinator, Fair Labor Standards Act, computer technology, network and internet acceptable use and safety, web content services and apps, student records, food services, free and reduced price meals, use of electronic wireless communication devices by district employees who operate district-owned or operated vehicles. That one deals with whether or not, if you're operating a district-owned or operated vehicle, should you be allowed to text or to be on your cell phone, especially if you have children present. And public attendance at school events. We discussed all of the updates for the various policies. We were able to address the first 30, as I noted, in the time frame that we had for the meeting, and the remainder, as I noted, will be addressed tomorrow morning. In several policy discussions, concern was expressed about the lack of the specific legal or the statutory listing, so we knew why we were being asked to make the changes. There were minor changes made to a few policies, and Sherry was kind enough to look at those, so we'll have those to look at tomorrow. As per a Neola change, and in an effort to be consistent, wherever the phrase Board of Education appeared, we took out the words of education, so it would be board to make it cleaner and shorter. And we will be reviewing a number of policies tomorrow, along with the new ones that we didn't get to. And we'll also be meeting in July and August. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other reports?
Yeah. I think I'm going to be able to break the 2-minute mark on reporting here. Very quick. Administrator Compensation Committee met on June 6th, and we reviewed a couple policy changes that the P&G committee thought we should. Policy 3410 and 3410A. 3410A was a general exempt category, which is reflected in Administrative Guidelines 3410A, which I just said. There was some discussion on whether a financial penalty for administrators, which is currently noted in the individual contract, should be part of the guidelines. It was recommended it be added to number 7 of the guidelines. An operational definition of exempt will also be added to the guideline language. And lastly, market salary ranges will be updated to reflect the current CPI adjustment. And the Administrative Compensation Committee will meet again when it is needed. And then the Education Committee met, and because Stephanie was enjoying the joys of air traffic flying, I chaired it. And for some reason, I remember that we had a stall for something, so Patty Andreessen True volunteered to tell us about the Project Grill that we just saw. The other thing that was on the agenda was the data dashboard, data warehouse adoption, where Julie Conrad talked about this goal being part of the strategic plan, and to develop multiple methods to evaluate student data. The intent is to redesign the data warehouse to provide reports and information that is usable for all. The district was looking for a data dashboard that would work for organizing metrics in 6 levels for different audiences and purposes at each level. And I'm sure that you all know that was included in the packet as a written report, so I'm not going to read the rest of that. The next meeting is scheduled for August 10th. It's a week later because both Kim and Julie are going to be gone that first Tuesday or first Thursday, so we moved it up a week. And that is the end. And I think I just made 2 minutes.
Well done. All right. Anybody else have a report? Any chairs? I think that's all of them. Okay. Then, yep, we have 2 written reports, one on the data dashboard and warehouse, and then the AGR written report. So workshops, we'll begin with the PBIS updates.
Hello.
Hi. Good evening.
So we're here to provide a quick update with PBIS.
I just,
Oh,
can you go back, Chris?
certainly.
He's finger happy. I just wanted to give kudos to Brian Casey, who has kind of been our data leader. We're really excited with the new EduClimber that we'll have. Stan specifically asked in this report for added minutes of instruction or less administrative time. So Brian was able to take our office discipline referrals and calculate added minutes of administrator time or added minutes of instruction. So I just wanted to, he couldn't be with us tonight, so just wanted to give him props.
And then on the celebration side, we have 18 schools of recognition by the state who have achieved at least bronze level with PBIS at the state level. So we thought we would add them in to celebrate the
And there were-
success.
There were actually 18 when I sent you the written report last week. There were 12, so we have 6 additional. So we're excited that 18 schools, that's quite a bit more from last school year.
Yeah, so job well done to all the schools for their hard work. On August 2nd, we'll have the Summer Institute for PBIS, and we're very happy to have Dr. Laura Riffle, who's the behavioral doctor. She presents nationally and internationally. We're going to have a heavy focus with cultural responsiveness, as we feel district-wide we can make gains with students who are underserved in academics and overserved with behavioral referrals. And then we have other highlights, including mental health, family engagement. The list is larger than this, but these are some of the umbrella parts that PBIS can help accompany. Onto the data. When we look at this, we're going to look at office discipline referrals at a 12th grade level. And we look at the chart. So this year's 12th graders were here, and last year that group was there. So we're going to look up at a diagonal. So we can see that our greatest gain was with our seniors, dropping from 299 down to 125 at one of our high schools, where our juniors went from 388 to 315, and our sophomore class went from 453 to 411.
Yeah, so period 1 was last school year. You see that was 9 of 2015 to 5 of 2016, then period 2. So when you look, the data is diagonally down. So you look, there's less in every area, and the seniors must be behaving really well at that particular high school because it went from 299 to 125.
And how we calculate gain minutes of instruction for students and less time an administrator needs is by using the cost benefit calculator. The calculator we borrowed from a local district who they set that for a referral for a student, it's about what they see as 15 minutes of instructional time. That's an average time, so that's not going to be your greatest offense or the smallest offense, so they look at that way. And we're an administrator, the view is 20 minutes of time when you take in time with the student and then the paperwork trail that follows it. So this is the device that we used when we used the next couple slides to break down the minutes. So in our 10th graders, we see that the minutes gained was 630, which comes down to about 11 hours of instruction in a full day, where the administrator time by the end of the year is about 2 full days of work time gained. 12th graders had a little greater gain, and or 11th graders, excuse me, then our 12th graders had some of the greater gain of time again, but that's going from 299 down to 115. So if you have any questions that way. This is looking at our elementary district-wide, and we don't have 100% success. As you can see, our 2nd grade, we actually had a small spike. which sometimes we see with academic test scores as well. But otherwise, all other grade levels, we had a decline going down. And when
Yeah, if I could just clarify, Chris, so this is data looking, the blue line is 15-16, so that was the year before. So if you look kindergarten to first grade, that kindergarten line then shifts down. Those are the first
red.
graders then in red. Do you know what I mean? So 2 is the only one that went up year to year, so we're thinking we have a really spirited group of second graders. We're trying to figure that out, which is not unusual in the state right now, so.
No. And when we generate those numbers through the calculator, so with kindergarten, you can see the gained minutes for students and administrators. And again, we would see the only grades that saw the adverse effect would be in second grade.
Yeah, so again, we're taking that total number of office discipline referrals and taking that state average that they use in the nearby district, also at the state PBIS and RTI center, and looking at the gained days of instruction at the kindergarten level is a full week of school. That's 5 full days. Administrator is getting 7 full days back, and then you look first grade, it goes to 3 days, 4 days for the administrator. So just breaking that down by minutes of that student's day, those discipline referrals or the lost minutes of instruction when they're waiting to be talked to or missing great instruction time, and the administrator, particularly when they're dealing with less referrals, they're getting more time to do their other tasks.
Then we have 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade as well. The numbers are good with increased learning and a decreased amount of administrator time. A different way we can look at data. So in this column, this is actually an area where we like to see the increase. So this is saying that for 2016-17, and this is a middle school level, so we're looking at 83% of our students had 1 or less referrals.
But those are major referrals, so that's a major discipline referral, and Lisa McLaughlin has presented with us every year. She also could not be here tonight. This is straight out of South Park, so when they started, or back in 2013-14, when you look at the numbers, at the end of this year, though that amount of students or that percentage, 83% had 1 or less major referrals. Then looking over 12% had 2 to 5 at the end of this year. 6 or less, 6 or greater is 5%.
And when we look here back in 2013-14, going from 8% to 5% is a nice gain with students learning the correct behavior, staying in class, and keeping their instruction. So there's a number of ways data can be broken down.
And Lisa likes to look at it this way. She and both Matt Wiebel, the way they enter, they have great fidelity in entering their data. So I'm very confident with these numbers and looking over the 4 years at how it's transformed South Park.
Looking forward, we mentioned the Institute with the cultural responsiveness. We're looking at having a double block session in the Institute, and we're going to be able to break data down and looking at behaviorals or academics, students by disability, race, socioeconomic, and gender. Are we underserving a certain population, overserving in another way? And again, trying to make sure that all of our students have the most education that they can that's high quality.
So when you say 2 blocks, Chris, what he's referring to at the PBIS Institute is we have Kent Smith coming from the State Center, who will be specifically addressing cultural responsiveness. And so we're going to have 2 tracks. So we're going to take that Dr. Laura Riffle, who is sponsored, by the way, by Art Construction from the PBIS funds. We're going to have 2 tracks of breakout sessions. And when we say a double block, I think it's 75 minutes.
Yep.
Is that? And Kent is going to take the tracks of the schools kind of divided by what tier they're on and they're using their own data to make it very pertinent to their school in setting goals in the area of cultural responsiveness.
So that every staff member that attends the Institute will get that whole portion of Kent. Then they'll have a chance to select some of the other breakouts.
Yep, so this first block will go on what is all included in what they call the Field Guide Pilot. It's, I think, a 52-page document, so we included the link to that. His second portion will be how to implement it within the building so that when the school year starts off running, goals can be set that buildings can work at, whether it's an academic goal, a behavioral goal, perhaps it's a family engagement. The state has also said that they'll come in and have quarterly state technical support meetings, and at the district level, we're looking at supporting at least monthly into the schools that would like
So
to be in
as
the
an
pilot.
example, if one of the high schools realized that they had a subgroup or a population when they figure out their risk ratios of a certain cultural group. And if they would be underserved in CAP classes or AP classes, but maybe overserved in our suspension or expulsion rate, we would say, what could we do to address that issue? Or what would we want to set as building goals to make our numbers a little more palatable? I am going to forward you this PowerPoint right when we get done here so that you'll all have access to that field guide.
Yep.
We are still modifying it today. So.
Yeah. In each building that'll be part of the pilot, they're going to have a focus, so their staff development will really be honing in on improving cultural responsiveness, which could be including having guest speakers, book studies, looking at identity of the school, the community, of the students, of the staff, breaking that down, answering some of the questions of how we currently use our system and how do we change practices to increase outcomes. And at the end, they're going to be really focusing on one major goal that they can attain in that year, whether it's along the behavioral track, academic track, or family engagement track. Those are the main areas.
So Margie just mentioned at the Institute, everyone, regardless of if they're a pilot, are going to get that message, gets that splash of cultural responsiveness and setting level. If the school chooses to be a pilot, which what's amazing is this pilot is offered at no cost to us. We'll show you in a minute who's interested, but they bring the guest speakers to us. In fact, Kent and several of his team are coming to an institute at no cost this summer, not even travel. So that's pretty fantastic that they want to do a pilot. They compared us a lot to Eau Claire when they look at our overall PBIS data and RTI, just really comparing size-wise and seeing what they did to address the same cultural responsive issues in Eau Claire.
And it'll be using their core teams in the building to be moving the cultural responsiveness forward. So it's going to be the same teams that are in place making a bigger impact focus. And again, looking at those questions, how do we use the system differently and how do we change practices to improve outcomes for all of our kids? And then each year, the thought is that we'll expand into more and more goals until we get that level where all students are achieving the same. And these are the schools of interest.
So these are the schools that expressed interest, and we know right now when Gary Mulry left us, which he was .4, paid at a higher level than Mr. Durkis over here was paid, we know that we will not be using Gary hardly at all next year. So right now we have .4 of Chris, which is 2 days a week. We would need to commit more of his time if we're allowed to do they'd only let us do 4 pilots, and that's really even with a full-time PBIS coordinator. So we're looking at how we can morph Chris's role without any FTE increase in the district, kind of looking at how we used Gary's salary, how we have PBIS budgeted within CEIS so as to not increase any cost to the district, but be allowed to engage in this free pilot for the next school year because we've seen the tremendous impact in the state.
And then over time, our goal is that more and more schools will expand on and work with the cultural responsiveness. And as PBS grows, we can look at, again, with the umbrella, mental health, trauma, connecting in with RTI, because PBIS is just the behavioral side of RTI, and just, again, serving a greater capacity for students.
Are there any questions? I know that Barb had questions, the fiscal impact last year, so I did put, not only did I put the budget of the supplies, but then I put the salary that's in addition to our budget in those numbers. And when you looked from year 1, year 2, and year 3, or if the public is looking, we are spending less this next year or projected to spend less on PBIS or the overall implementation. And that's because we have more schools that are trained now, and as the implementation gets greater into tier 2 and tier 3, they become more self-sufficient, the schools do. Are there questions?
I appreciate your numbers data here and having the comparison going back to the 2015-16 school year through the 2017-18 school year. When I looked at that budget in the staff report, it showed a figure of $110,000 and $700 minus $4,000 for a net budget impact of $106,700. And then you had a separate sheet labeled Oshkosh Area School District PBIS Budget 2017-18, dated May 2017. And if you scroll down, or look down toward the bottom of that, where it says Linda Piron proposed, and there are several lines there, and then the final line says total OASD budget for 2017-18, and it's $42,100. So I'm trying to reconcile the $42,100 with the $100 and
So I can explain that.
$6,700.
So that number, the total impact, that should say general budget impact. That should say general fund. Chris and Margie put this together, and I should have changed. That's not the total. So we would use CEIS or grant dollars for that $23,600 that you see there.
Okay.
The $42,100 is the impact on the general fund. So you have to contribute from both sources to make it successful. So some comes out of Fund 10, some out of Fund 27. The proposed budget is supplies, and then it's $45,000 of salary and fringe, which is above and beyond what we have in our budget now. So that's not only Margie Vandenbogart, but that's our trainers. So that's Sherry Garvey, and that's also a couple Fidelity days with Gary. I'm probably going to push that away. That's just what's in our CEIS budget, Barb.
Okay.
So that's the $45,000 is the salary in addition to.
Okay, I didn't see anything in here about a $45,000 salary, so that was where that question came from. And could you please explain the acronym CEIS?
Yes, and I know that should have been spelled out too, right? I did not do this budget. That is Coordinated Early Intervening Services, and that is set aside dollars from the flow through or the grant that we get from the IDEA funds, which is Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So CEIS, Coordinated Early Intervening Services, have to be purposeful and used for early intervention and pre-intervention services. So before we would refer for EBD or special education services, they're very targeted. We've been fortunate enough to have our behavior interventionists funded out of that and also do some nice staff development training. We've bought some curriculum materials that Kim or Julie could certainly say early literacy materials. So that's what that is. When it says Linda Piron funds this is not my personal pocketbook, nor is it my fund or my proposal. That's just the way I think Gary and Chris and Margie proposed it to me to see if it would fit into the CEIS budget.
So the 106,000.
Yeah. We call it Linda's, because she knows what pool it comes out of.
So the 106,700 then is what fits in the budget, and it includes the $45,000 in salary.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes.
I have a couple of other questions, unless somebody else wants to jump in here.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I should speak for them.
My recollection, and that's not always real clear, but my recollection was that PBIS was designed to help with reducing the number of referrals and suspensions and expulsions. Is that vaguely accurate?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I went to the DPI website last night, and if you haven't had a chance to look at these data, I'd recommend this in advance of the August 2nd event. What I looked up was suspensions across the schools in our Fox Valley sports grouping. That includes Oshkosh, Appleton, Fond du Lac, Hortonville, Kaukauna, Kimberly, and Neenah. And what I found was an upward trend only for the Oshkosh Area School District in terms of suspensions. We had more suspensions in the 14-15 school year than any of those other school districts in our athletic conference. According to these numbers from the DPI site, we had over 557 students who were suspended, which gave us a suspension rate of 5.6, which is double that of the nearest school. You can also plug any schools you want into this database. You can plug any school districts into this to do comparisons, but to me this data was very telling. So then I dug deeper, and I could not get the data for the 2015-16 school year. It's just not available. But I looked at days of suspension, and in 2012-13 we had 1,510 days of suspension. In the 2013-14 school year, we had 1,904 days of suspension. And in the 2014-15 school year, we had 2,190 days of suspension. So I'm pleased to see that we have fewer referrals, but we have an awful lot of kids out of school who
Does
are
that speak to the
evidently
So-
misbehaving.
So Kent chose Kent chose us for the pilot based on exactly that data, and he has
Okay.
2015-16.
Good.
There is an alarming upward tick in suspensions, and I can tell you that special ed students, I'm most familiar with their suspensions because when they get to 10 days, we have to do what's called a manifestation determination, because 2 weeks of lost instruction is alarming and it's concerning. And I think as a special ed director, looking at even elementary suspension rates, and it's hard to swallow. I have 2 elementary principals here who could talk maybe to this, but it's hard for me to see elementary students out for 5 days or a full week. And we know Matt and his school psychs are very well aware of what's going on with suspension. Also, Dr. Jones has done some pretty significant calculations with suspension and expulsion data. So we're very well aware, which is why we were very happy that Kent Smith is choosing to bring a team in and help us address the issue.
I did not copy the data on expulsions because there's something missing. In the 2014-15 school year, according to this data taken off the DPI website yesterday, we had no days of expulsion, kids expelled, and that would be wonderful, but I don't think that was the case.
Barb, I think as we maintain fidelity, or as we use Infinite Campus more, we're even looking at those numbers when we pull groups and subgroups, and looking now as we go, Dave, is this our 3rd year that we'll go into Infinite Campus? We're seeing the data to get 4th year, he's saying 4th. 4th, but looking at how that's entered and making sure it's entered. As you know, when we have any seclusion and restraint, I review all those monthly, every other board meeting, and I look at that suspension. If I see a certain student that I look at the end result suspended, if there's numbers, Teresa's really good. If there's a staff injury, I'm dispatched to that school to see what's going on. Is this the proper placement? I'm pleased to announce that our WIT program, or whatever it takes, had 0 suspensions this school year. That is wonderful. So that's an upward trend with EBD. You know, that's a start, and just taking what works and then
think, Barb,
sharing
it's
that.
kind of a paradigm shift. You know, we're trying to do business differently now, and the old way of doing it was you're out of here. And we know that's not the way we need to do it, but it's going to take some time to change that.
Well, it's concerning that none of the other school districts in the athletic conference are showing this
That's very
increase over
surprising
the
to
last
me.
3 years, and that our rate is double that
Yeah,
of the
that's very
closest
surprising.
district. And that's an awful lot of learning time that's lost by children who are not in school. And so that's concerning. So I hope that your August 2nd event will address.
We're very hopeful on that,
Some
you
of
know, we
those
can look at
issues.
the subgroups by race and disability and
Right. And you
Make
can
an
break that down.
improvement.
The DPI allows you to break this data down, excuse me, by grade level, by gender, by race, ethnicity, and by disability status. I didn't take time to do that, but.
and that's part of the reason why the big focus is the responsive part with our. So.
I think it'd be really helpful if Barb and you, another board member, wanted with you to participate maybe in a conference call with Kent and say, these are the numbers. Share that exactly from a school board's perspective, that we don't want these lost minutes of instruction. What can we do to support our administrators? What can we do to skill up our teachers in the area of forming relationships, trauma-informed care? What can we do to keep kids at school, that we know that school is a safer or a better place for 7 hours versus home? You're definitely, that's great that you looked into that. That's exactly the data that Kent had when he chose Oshkosh as a pilot school in Wisconsin.
Those numbers sound pretty on. I mean, they were wrong with the expulsions. They could be wrong on the suspensions too.
The number of suspensions, what it does not desegregate is, it does not show you if a student is suspended for 5 days, that counts as 5 suspensions. So I would want to dig deeper into that, looking at number of students, just like what I do with Act 125 or seclusion and restraint. It always looks like a very large number at, say, a school that has a large number of EBD. And then when you look at the number, you know, looking at it through both lenses would be helpful, which Kent will have access to. So I would certainly welcome a sit down with anyone prior to the institute about priorities or what the school board would want to see, because we're there to accomplish good things. So, other questions?
Thank you for your
Are
work.
all our schools doing PBIS now, or are we 100% in?
We are almost at 100%. We have one elementary school that's not yet there, and we had hoped to springboard them or onboard them this year, but there will be an administrative change there. So we are hopeful that it will be in the next year.
Any other questions? All right.
Thank you for your
so
time,
much.
and I will
Thank
forward you the PowerPoint right away, so you'll have the link.
All right, our next workshop is Project Key.
Good evening. With me tonight is Sarah Paquette, the principal at Merrill Elementary, and Sarah Pagel, our Project Key grant coordinator. So the reason we're here tonight is our Project Key grant is coming to the end of its 3-year cycle. So before we submit the end report to the Department of Education, we wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to talk to you a little bit about what Project Key accomplished in the 4 schools that are currently under that grant. So to begin with, we're going to talk a little bit about what Project Key is, just in case there are people out there who don't really know. As I mentioned, Project Key was a name given to our 3-year elementary school counseling grant. And what that grant did is it brought in $1.2 million for our district to use toward not only increasing our counselor FTE in the 4 schools under the grant, but it also provided a great deal of professional development for our staff. It allowed us to do different types of data collection that we hadn't done in the past. And it provided resources to our staff and students in a number of other ways. So as you can see here, the 4 schools under Project Key are Merrill Elementary School, Washington Elementary School, Reed Elementary School, and Oaklawn Elementary. And here are our 4 grant counselors along with Sarah, our grant coordinator. So starting on the left and back is Lisa Hansen, who is at Washington. Anne Marie Koslewski's in the middle, she's at Oaklawn. On the right, you see Wendy Falk, who is our counselor at Reed. Up in front on the left, we have Pani Yang, who's at Merrill Elementary. And of course, Sarah is on the front right there. So this slide just shows the different types of professional development opportunities our staff at these 4 grant schools had an opportunity to participate in. Not only that, but we got to a point where we got to expand outside of our 4 grant schools. So for instance, like our trauma-informed care initiative, we were able to have 6 people trained as trainers for trauma-informed care, and that's going to be universal training next year. And I think that is going to partially address some of the statistics Dr. Herzog mentioned, where by our schools becoming more trauma-informed, they're going to be able to help students regulate a little bit easier and hopefully be more preventative in addressing the underlying problems, building relationships before students get to a point where they would do something that would lead to suspension or expulsion. But in addition to trauma-informed care, our staff participated in a lot of different conscious discipline trainings, mindfulness. They've gone to the state and national PBIS conventions, zones of regulation, Superflex, which is the social skills curriculum, has been brought into a number of our schools. So really our staff has been able to become educated in a number of different ways. Any of you have, if you want to jump in at any time, feel free.
I think the reason why that's important is as classroom teachers, you have so many things you're dealing with, and if you don't have that toolbox of strategies to use, often your first time is, I might have to send that student out to have somebody else help them because you're not sure how to. Having all of these programs and options available allows you to do that within your classroom walls and make sure that your classroom community is strong. Therefore, less missed class time.
Mm-hmm. And from a counseling perspective, this makes things more universal. So myself as a counselor, if I'm going to help a student, I know I'm using the same language as the teacher, and the teacher is using the same language as myself. So it helps a lot with that intervention. It's consistent.
So I think the thing that Project Key did that was most beneficial for these 4 schools was it provided more counselor FTE. So prior to Project Key, each of these 4 schools had half-time counselor. During Project Key, they had a full-time counselor in their building. So what that did is it brought their student to counselor ratio from roughly 670 to 1 and brought that down to roughly 299 students to every counselor. So that was even well below the state average, and it aligned much more closely with what national counseling organizations recommend. So now we're going to get into the actual data portion of the presentation. So I mentioned that Project Key allowed us to do some new things with data, use some new tools. One of those new tools that it allowed us to use was the Social Skills Improvement System. So this was a rating scale that was completed in the fall and the spring of each school year. And what it did is it took a closer look at individual students' social skills, problem behaviors, and academic competence. And what we did is we compared numbers both in fall and spring to see what the overall gain was. But then we also looked at it throughout the term of the grant cycle. So this particular chart shows the percent of students identified as needing Tier 2 or Tier 3 pro-social support. And what that means is Tier 1 students receive universal curriculum, universal support. So if you think of our elementary school guidance program where the counselor comes in and teaches lessons, that's all considered Tier 1. Tier 2 is for any students that need a little bit more than what they receive at the universal level. And then Tier 3 are the more intensive supports. So when we say Tier 2 or Tier 3, those are students that need something beyond what every other student gets. And what you see through this data is that from the start of the grant cycle to the end, we saw a decrease of the number of students who are Tier 2 or Tier 3 students by about 31%. So we're really happy to see that. Another key indicator that we used was office disciplinary referral numbers. So every school tracks the number of ODRs, is what we call them. And here in this chart, you see the numbers from year 1 to year 2 to year 3. So starting out in year 1, we had 708 office discipline referrals between our 4 schools. Year 2, that jumped down to 502. And for year 3, we saw a little bit of an uptick at 514, but overall, again, through the course of our grant cycle here, we saw a 27% decrease in the number of office discipline referrals at these 4 schools.
You're great.
All right. So University of Wisconsin Stout put all this data together for us. So it's all listed in our report here, but this next chart shows a particular subgroup of students that we measured DRA, or developmental reading assessment scores, on throughout the course of these 3 years. So the subgroup was identified based on
Well, they had 1 ODR within the first 6 weeks of school. That was our first indicator. Then we were tracking, of those kids, their scores in the SSIS of being at Tier 1 and Tier 2. So we made it, or Tier 2 and Tier 3. So we made an at-risk group, I guess you could call it. And that's where we were tracking their academics.
So the cool thing is, as you can see with this subgroup, each year, a large majority of the subgroup increased their DRA scores from the start of the year to the end of the year. It far exceeded our goal. Our year 1 goal was 3%, 87% achieved that goal. Year 3 was 15%. We had 100% of students increase their DRA scores from the start to the end of the year. And we saw an overall increase in those scores of 15%.
How can it only be?
Also, too, is our number of kids that were identified from the beginning to the end also went down.
How can the overall score be 15%? What is that measuring?
The percent from year 1. So it's
So if you start at 80, sorry.
Yeah.
It's just such a huge gain. The 15 makes it seem tiny. Gotcha. If you start really high, it's hard to go.
Yep.
That's true. Gotcha.
One of the other tools we used was the Child Development Project Survey. And what this did is it looked at positive relationships within the school. And basically what it did is students rated their feelings about the classroom or the school in these 4 areas. So it included autonomy, support, community, and trust.
It broke it down between rate certain questions amongst just the kids in your classroom and just your personal teacher. Then it expanded to the entire school, any teacher, any student in the class. And so that's how they broke down the percentages.
So again, starting in with our baseline, we already had fairly high numbers in most of these areas, with the exception of autonomy. But then, of course, over the course of the grant cycle, we saw gains in all of these areas for our students, which was great to see. And one of the other key pieces of our grant was family involvement. We wanted to bring more parents, more families into our schools. And we measured that in 2 different ways. The first way was through family night attendance. The second way was through the number of people who accessed our website or other social media networks. So what we did is we compiled numbers of individuals who attended family night prior to the grant, which was our baseline. And then as you can see, from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, we saw increased participation each year. We also had a Project Key family night each year, which brought families from all 4 of our schools together. And those were usually pretty neat events.
It was family nights and our parent-teacher conferences and our get-to-know-you conferences. So when we invited the families into the school, we were tracking our attendance.
And then we saw dramatic increases with the number of people accessing our social media, in particular our website. Saw a huge increase. And then these are just some of the professional development opportunities that our staff members had. All in all, there were 412 opportunities for staff to attend at least one of these events. But again, a lot of these we touched on earlier. Zones of regulation, trauma-informed care, PBIS. Those things are all included here.
And you'll notice in year 3, we only have 54 go this year, but that's because we were trying to focus on sustainability. And like Matt said, we sent 6 people to be trained, the trainers of the 7 essential ingredients of trauma. And so the previous years, we were training all our staff. We brought in Sarah Daniels in year 2. Year 1, we had Stacy Otto come do trauma-informed care. So year 3 was sustainability. So we focused that chunk of budget to have train the trainer, so that if we were to go into year 4, that number would be increased because we're expanding it to the district.
So all in all, the data we collected really reinforced what we already knew, and that was that Project Key was a huge success for our 4 grant schools. Our principals would say the same thing, I'm sure, as well as our counselors, our staff, our students, our families. And Project Key wouldn't have been so successful without your support, without the support of our administrators, Candeo, who did a lot of our advertising for us, as well as UW Stout, who did all our statistical analysis, the Department of Education in general, and then our tremendous staff and families within our Project Key schools. That's it for our presentation. Are there any questions?
I have the obvious one. Now what will we do? All of these wonderful things have happened, and we've worked on sustainability, but what happens now? The fear is we've made all these gains. Do we backslide? Do we stay stable?
I think we gained a lot of momentum through Project Key, and the nice thing is that professional development is going to carry on.
Okay.
Whether it be through trauma-informed care. In our grant schools, I know they've become they've taken huge steps in terms of conscious discipline. And those are the things that aren't going to go away. Hopefully at some point we can recover the lost FTE for our counselors through the grant. But the good things that this grant did for us are going to continue down the road.
And I think part of that was the professional development opportunities for classroom teachers especially, because that's now a skill that they have that they're going to practice and take with them. We knew going into this grant that we were looking at a 3-year period. The goal was sustainability, but $1.2 million is a lot of money to just magically appear and come up with. So we had to talk about and come up with ways of, if we want this to sustain within, we need to train our staff and the people we have in the classroom every day. So I do see, while the lost FTE and counseling will definitely be missed, I think we might see a little bit of a spike, but I think Matt, how he said it, was at the core of a lot of our schools now are the conscious discipline practices, are the trauma-informed care practices, and that solid base of understanding is there. And that is spreading throughout the district. I don't have the exact number, but we have a lot of other schools who were not associated with the grant who are now sending staff members to be trained in conscious discipline. Because with other staff members talking about it and hearing good things and seeing our results, they want to do similar things. So I think it's just that slow shift.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Thank you for all your good work.
Yeah, thank you. It's great results.
Thank you.
Okay. And our third presentation is the elementary Chromebook RFP results.
Timing myself because I was told to do this quick, so that's usually not in my
Try to beat
my
2-minute
wheelhouse.
record, but
Yeah,
I don't know
well,
if we
we'll
can
see
do
if we
it.
can see if we can do this. Some of the content is new, so this is good. One of the resolutions you have before you this evening is about our elementary Chromebook RFP results. And while it's a pretty straightforward resolution, we have the lowest bidder. We have a great relationship with that vendor, and we're really excited about it. It was suggested that we provide a little bit of background info about the project and where we are. And sometimes we forget where we came from in all of this because it's our third year. We're rolling it out at the elementary level, but it's really exciting for them, and they've been waiting for some time. So just a little history for those who may not know. The community really identified some key priorities around personalized learning and equity, and those are the two real core components that we're getting at with this purchase, because we're taking it down to the elementary level. The community, as far as where the resources coming from, the community voted in 2014 to approve the referendum that would allow us to do this. We've spent several years planning for a staged implementation, and it is the one thing that has set Oshkosh apart from some of the other districts that have done their implementation. Many districts have done much faster implementations, and everyone that we've talked to a district has regretted it. So I think the staged implementation has actually worked in our favor. And for those people who were wondering how did this all come about, the first phase was the installation of a state-of-the-art infrastructure. We got to test out a little bit of that tonight because the power was out for 2 hours, but the internet worked, our phones worked, wireless access worked, the generator was humming along just fine. Phase 2 was bringing in our tech integrators in 14-15. And as you're going to see, some of the data I have shows that is, if I had to take one component that's really making this work, it's that component. In Phase 3, we provided staff with the technology in 14-15 ahead of the students. That was also something that was a little different than most districts did. Once again, we just learned from what other people were doing, so that's great. And the fourth phase is what we're in now, providing students with access to the technology. And you can see in 15-16, we roll it out for grades 9 through 12, 16-17 for grades 6 through 8, and next year it's going to be grade 3 through 5 students. But it's also important to understand that in grades K-2, our students are also going to have some improved access because they're not going to be competing with the other kids for the computer resources that are there. Literally today, Education Week released the Technology Counts article, and it brought together a lot of different research, and boiling it down into just a couple of slides, basically the issue is more technology, less training. What's happening in districts across the country is there's a drop in professional development for reading teachers by 3% over the last 6 years. So you're starting to see districts across the country I think what's happening is they're diverting the resources into the hardware components and not necessarily focusing in on the PD components. We don't do that. here. We're definitely bucking that trend. There's a big divide in the professional development between the low poverty and the high poverty. They showed a 10% swing in the PD provided to the low poverty schools, less PD provided to low poverty school, less PD provided to the higher poverty schools than the lower poverty schools. So that also kind of strikes at the whole Oshkosh ethic around equity. We also buck that trend. New teacher tech integration skills. We had a meeting today with Julio Moran from UW Oshkosh, and Dr. Herzog kind of hooked us up and put him in contact with us, and he came in today and we had a great conversation. And one of the things he had talked about from the university's lens is, what are the skills that teachers should be coming out with in regards to technology? So we put him in contact with our tech integrators, and they've said, well, as we train new teachers, here's some things that we're seeing that would help as they come out. So that new teacher tech integration skills, it is such a blessing to have UWO here, you know, basically right next to us, because we can have those conversations in real time. And this is just a quote from, as I read through the entire study, technology is everywhere today, but a digital divide among schools has emerged because quality and equity issues are huge and they need to be confronted. I can tell you and anybody who's watching on TV that we are confronting those issues from a technology perspective. These are just a couple of graphs. The top one is the broadband access. As you can see, Wisconsin is doing okay. About 90+ % of our schools have what the FCC would call the target. And what they call the target is 1/10 of a megabyte per student enrolled. That should be enough. I disagree. In Wisconsin, we tend to say 1 megabyte per student, which is what we have here in Oshkosh, which is 10-fold increase over what the FCC is the minimum. The reason we feel that's important is because the emerging use of video and other high bandwidth functions is only going to increase. The bottom one illustrates the increase in technology. You can see that that's mainly Chromebooks, and that's across the country. We are not the only districts that have been doing this. That's why I wanted to show some of this data so you could see. Nationwide, there's been a 363% increase in purchase of mainly Chromebooks, but mobile technology. Ours went up 494% because of the one-to-one rollout that we've been doing. We've also decreased in some of the areas in terms of workstations as well as iPads, but it's been quite an increase. So, strategic plan alignment. Priority 1 is improve student learning for all, and I also highlighted down there Priority 5, strengthening partnerships and community engagement. The meeting we had today with UW Oshkosh was just an example of that partnership. They are looking at our Chromebook rollout, and they had a bunch of great questions, and we could say, here's how we do these various things. We gave them our budget, we gave them all of our documentation, and said, you know, hit us with any questions that you have, and I think they left very pleased, and you know, it was definitely, we got as much as we gave in that meeting, so it was really nice. There's 2 goals in our strategic plan that this focuses on: ensuring teachers and curriculum can support a personalized learning environment, goal 1A, and 1B is fairness and equity of instructional resources. You know, one of the stories that I think Dr. Herzog told was the brat fry story of when they're trying to raise money for technology, and it kind of depended on what school you were at. It's safe to say that that is no longer a need. Every classroom has the same equipment. The bandwidth that is provided to the schools is all ideal, and now everybody's going to have the same devices and the same access. So that's a big advantage. We also had a parent information night on June 7th. We had it was a beautiful night. Still got about 40 people to show up. We also post a YouTube video from that so they can hear the presentation if they're unable to attend. And just like the last 2 years, we're going to repeat that on August 22nd. So the first one was at Webster's Auditorium, which is a great venue for us, and the August 22nd will be at the Traeger Cafetorium, and we'll be doing that. The equipment selection. This is a little different than the high school rollout. The Chromebooks are the 5th generation of the 11-inch HP Chromebooks. So our youngest kids will have a little bit of bragging rights as far as speed. They'll look the same, they hold up, they're very durable. And then the other big change is that cart you see there to the right. That is a Spectrum Cloud 32 cart. I can proudly say that's manufactured in Chippewa Falls. And it is by far the most durable device that we looked at, and the committee picked it unanimously because they said this one's going to hold up for multiple cycles of devices. So we're real pleased about that. Here's the actual bid results. So we're looking at purchasing 2,800 units. The winner was Technology Resource Advisors. PDS came in second. We had three other vendors who we had submitted the bid documentation to. They chose not to bid. The winning bid is $678,600 to TRA, and that includes the deployment, and that also includes the warranty services. So that warrants those devices for a 4-year term. Yes.
And they do all the boxes for us, right?
The boxes are already going to be gone before they get here. They actually have the 100 carts at their warehouse right now, so they will load them. They have a listing from all of our buildings of every homeroom, where they're located, with a map and the quantity. So they will get them enrolled. The little stickers that say replacement cost on there will be on everyone. They'll be loaded, charged, moved into our facilities, and when the teachers come in, they will be able to unload them and start using them. So they'll be all set and ready to go. So that works well. So here's the timeline. Board approval, hopefully tonight. We will generate the purchase order tomorrow, and then the devices will be purchased, configured, delivered between now and August, and then September. We're all set to do our elementary classroom rollout. We have 14 buildings, so we can't do it all in one day like we've done in the past, but we do it over a span of a couple of weeks. So I guess at that point, I will open it up for any questions you might have.
Are they each cart just being stored in each classroom then?
Yes.
They'll be stored right in their classroom,
Yep.
so they have access to them all the time?
You bet, and they'll be charged, and they're also
Right.
mobile. They can wheel them around, so if they're going to do something at a different location, they can wheel them where they need to go, or the students can take them. Part of our instruction with the kids will be teaching them how to hold on to it and carry it. They're rubberized on the edges, which is really nice. They do not come in the same cases as our middle and high school ones do, because they don't take them home. So, and the insurance rates have dropped quite a bit as a result of that, because they know the students won't be taking them home.
And Dave, you might want to share that on the whole equity issue, the progress underway right now with full and equal access to Lakeside.
Yes. In addition to this, what we've been doing is we've been taking care of our last, most southern end school. Lakeside, as you know, is a long ways down the highway, so it was always prohibitive to put fiber down there. So they ended up having that bandwidth requirement. They barely made the FCC one. And frankly, they wouldn't be able to have enough bandwidth to run our security cameras that we're going to be installing over the summer. So we worked with E-Rate, and Lori Mortensen, who works as part of the technology services team, did a ton of paperwork with the federal E-Rate to get the discount, and you voted on that. I think that was almost 12 months ago. The construction is occurring right now, and we anticipate being done by July 22nd. And by the start of school, they will be just as fast as any other district, any other school in the district. So we're looking forward to that as well.
Awesome.
Over the summer, do they need to be kept charged, or they
No.
just unplug them and plug them back in
Usually
in
what we
September?
try to do is get them charged up once before we go ahead and put them in the box. And we found over the past couple of years, they're stored in sites that some have air conditioning, like North, but West certainly doesn't. And when we pulled them out, they were 85, 90% charged, ready to go. So they've been holding up really well as far as charging. It's been all-day charging. I've had almost, I want to say, less than half a dozen battery issues out of the 5,300 that we currently have in the hands of kids. Yes.
I wanted to thank you for meeting with Mr. Moran today. I've known him for a number of years. He was nominated and voted onto the Shapiro governing board.
Oh, okay.
He's a parent in the district, very knowledgeable. He's really the go-to person in the College of Education and Human Services, very forward-thinking. And I know he was delighted with the time you and the tech integrators spent with him today. He came back to the university and shared with me for probably 20 minutes how excited he was about meeting with you and how valuable that was to him
Yeah.
in terms of what you shared. And he was very complimentary of the overall big picture plan that you and your team have put together. So I just wanted
Thank you.
to pass that on. I just have one question. I know the 6th through 12th grade students have their Chromebooks in the handy dandy little black cases.
Yes.
With the embroidered
Yes.
logo. Will this be true with the elementary students as well?
No, there was no, we looked at getting a hard shell case for them. The problem was that it really didn't provide any extra protection over the way those units are designed right now. There's even a non-government one that doesn't have the harder case, and then we bought these other cases to go on top and test. But really just the stock education units seem to work out best. The one thing we found with the cases in the grades 6 through 12 is we've had most of our issues have been with cases. They haven't been with Chromebooks. And we're aware of that, and we're constantly working with vendors to figure out, but there's nothing that can replace the, as much as it was somewhat of an afterthought, putting that logo on the case and having those out in the community has been really a nice way to show the taxpayers what's going on.
Yep.
And it was really, it's worth the hassles we've had with some of the zippers and some of the other issues we've had with the cases. But no, they will be sitting in the carts, and we even, if you put too much around the Chromebook, they don't fit in the little sleeves inside the cart as well. So with that kind of limited us a little bit. But
Does that mean the students will not be able to take them home?
correct, correct. At the elementary level right now. Now, will that be permanent? We don't know. We're kind of evolving through this, but if we ever changed it to where maybe they were taking it home, or maybe in 5th grade, what we would do at that point is we'd go ahead and get cases, and that wouldn't be difficult for us. So.
I just had a quick comment. I think
Sure.
you were there when Lisa McLaughlin was telling us how every single Chromebook got returned except for one charger or something.
Yep.
Was it that smoothly across other schools too?
Well, usually in my line of work, no news is good news. And there wasn't a lot of news about it, and everybody seemed to have been checked in. The Destiny records were all updated, and we all kind of looked around and said, is this it? Is this went this well? And I think it did. So,
awesome.
yeah, the biggest issue is cleaning probably 5 to 10% of the cases. Sometimes kids from grades 6 through 12s are not always the neatest, and their rooms and their Chromebook cases might look a little bit alike. So, yeah.
So, what's the lifespan of these units?
4 years is what we're looking at. The staff units have been in existence. Next year will be their 4th year, and as I said, I've really been waiting for the batteries will be the first thing to start to go on them, and we've had a few batteries go, but not many. And we've been pretty pleased with them. We're hopeful that we'll get a solid 4 years out of them. Some people may say, what do you do with them then? We'll be using some of them as spares, because as you know, when students forget to charge them or forget them at home, we usually will give them a spare to use during the day, and we don't want to give them a brand new shiny new one to use during the day. We'll give them a little bit older one during the day so they learn to charge them up well and bring them. So.
And we should be reminded that of the 7-year cycle of that 2014 referendum, we had built into the plan, we had 3 years worth of replacement beyond that initial 4 years.
Right.
And from a standpoint of maintaining continuity with good service, the last thing we want to have is the quality dwindle so that we diminish all the gains we've made with both trust in the community, but certainly reliability on the part of students and staff.
We should be able to get 2 full cycles in, which is going to be really good. And the other thing we haven't really talked about is our staff. The teaching staff have done a phenomenal job of redesigning instruction using the technology, and some of it is
their cherished communication tool.
And our high schools have redesigned what they've done so they collect them far later than we used to. We used to collect them like a week before school would end so everybody could do the inventory thing and check them in. Now they've pushed that out right to the very end as long as they can because they know in some cases kids are using it just to prepare for their finals. So.
I think that was the case for middle school this year. They turned them in before, quite a ways before school. And then there was a rush to find ways to finish homework because they had quite a few homework assignments. That was pretty chaotic for a lot of parents, I know. So yeah, that was a rough week.
And also remember, any students who are in summer school get to keep their units.
Well, they had to turn them in, and then they could go get them back the last day of school.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
If they remembered.
Yeah. If they remembered.
Mine remembered.
There's a good YouTube video too. I just clicked on it to just get a sense of it, and I stayed till the end. So.
Really? Well, thanks. I have 2 views now. This is great.
Yourself and him?
Yeah, I tested it once.
Second guy. All right. Is there any other questions? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank
very
you.
much. All right, we move into the consent resolution agenda. For the consent agenda, the board's been furnished with background material on each item or has discussed it at a previous meeting. These will be acted upon with one vote without discussion. If a board member wants to discuss any item, it will be pulled out of the consent agenda and will be voted on separately. I've been asked to poll 1B and 2. Anybody else? Okay, the board will consider approval of 1A, personnel resolution, appointments, temporary appointments, resignations, and 3, elementary Chromebook RFP results.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Carlin?
Aye.
Carlin, aye. Eliason?
Aye.
Eliason, aye. Evans?
Aye.
Evans, aye. Garner?
Aye.
Garner, aye. Herzog?
Aye.
Herzog, aye. Olmsted?
Aye.
Olmsted, aye. Peschel?
Aye.
Peschel, aye. Motion carried.
Okay, resolution 1B, be it resolved that the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education approve the retirements as filed with the Secretary to the Board of Education.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, discussion. Yes.
Mrs. Garner, I'd ask that this one be pulled. Once again, we have 4 longtime employees who are choosing to enter a different age and stage of their respective lives, who have served the children and the parents of this community for a goodly number of years. Mary Cram has been a media specialist at Perry Tippler Middle School, Franklin Elementary School, and Jefferson Elementary Schools for 17 years. Kevin Kint, an assistant custodian fireperson 1, has been at Carl Traeger since 1999. Wayne Wagner has been a social studies teacher at North High School since 1986. And Linda Whitney has been an ID teacher assistant at Jacob Shapiro Brain-Based Instruction Laboratory School since 1991. And these, I've known a couple of these people personally. I've been in their classrooms and their media centers, and you could always count on a smile from Mr. Wagner and Mrs. Cram whenever you saw them. They have always been very child-focused, and I just wanted to thank them for their years of service to the children and families of our school district and wish them well in retirement.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, please call the roll.
Eliason?
Aye.
Eliason, aye. Evans?
Aye.
Evans, aye. Garner?
Aye.
Garner, aye. Herzog?
Aye.
Herzog, aye. Olmsted?
Aye.
Olmsted, aye. Peschel?
Aye.
Peschel, aye. Carlin?
Aye.
Carlin, aye. Motion carried.
Okay, resolution number 2, be it resolved that the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education approves CISA 6 contracts for the 2017-2018 school year as filed with the Secretary to the Board of Education.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Mrs. Garner, I'd also ask that this one be pulled for 2 reasons. Number 1, I wanted to commend Mrs. Piron for her creativity in reducing our out-of-district expenses. And also, I'm curious, since our contract with CISA is reduced by about $700,000, how much savings we've actually netted as a result of many of those costs coming in-house.
Well, in the staff report, under my major points, the first 3, the transportation, the vision, and the alternative EBD, and then 20,000 savings on the number 4, because the moving the technology staff in from CISA to us doesn't I mean, it doesn't, they're still going to be employees, and we're still going to pay them a salary and a benefit, and we're giving them approximately the same salary and benefits. We do save the CISA administration
What is the
fee.
percentage? Isn't that like what's that percentage?
It's like $20,000 we'll be saving.
Right, but what is, don't we pay the CISA a certain percentage when
Yeah,
we
it's like a
use them?
3.5 or 4%.
Okay.
It's a 4%.
Right, thank you.
And so the top three are actually reductions by Linda, so she could probably address them in an eye.
So the transportation, we won't have at all. Those are students that were placed outside of the district. We will not have that expense because I'm bringing those students back. So that will be a total cost savings. And there'll be no added transportation for the students in those routes because those are routes that are already running to existing programs. The vision, I am using existing staff. I will have a tiny bit of staff development, some who are teachers that will just be using points. Well, not points, they're 14 hours are required, sorry for saying that. I am using existing staff. So where there are students with visual impairments, it is our plan to skill up paraprofessionals and have point people at those schools. So that is net cost savings there. Alternative EBD, that's the students that we were transporting alternatively, and some are coming back to our WIT Academy, some are coming back to Encompass, all programs that exist without additional, so those are all savings.
And I've been encouraging Linda to take a serious look at as a regional large school district, that we comprehensively serve inside the district, and that they, and frankly, we become an attraction for neighboring districts that might need additional services under the current law of having to potentially pay up to $12,000 at minimum for a student that had to be serviced in another district. Why wouldn't we be at the stage that we would comprehensively serve fully our students and not be having both tuition out but also transportation costs out? And Linda's been able to make that work.
I just want to thank you, the two of you, for making this happen in an era where we really need to be good, well, we always need to be good stewards of the funding that we receive, and you've certainly demonstrated that here with the funding. You've been able to save the district and provide quality services within the district at a reduced cost in terms of the administrative fee on the tech support people and on the transportation for meeting the needs of special students.
And for the sake of students themselves and their parents, having their children closer to home is a far more quality delivery of service. And thanks, Linda, especially for that leadership.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. All right. Do we have requests for future agenda items?
No, we're going to vote.
Oh, gosh, we should vote on that, huh?
Yes.
Let's call the roll. Sorry.
Evans?
Aye.
Evans, aye. Garner?
Aye.
Garner, aye. Herzog?
Aye.
Herzog, aye. Olmsted?
Aye.
Olmsted, aye. Peschel?
Aye.
Peschel, aye. Carlin?
Aye.
Carlin, aye. Eliason?
Aye.
Eliason, aye. Motion carries.
All right, now we can do a request for future agenda items. Anybody? All right, move on to it.
Allison.
Oh, sorry. Missed you.
Sorry. I would like to see a written report in which we would be able to review the staff report. It probably goes back to the fall of 2015, in which a recommendation was made to adopt Neola as our policy provider. And then the report to include all the funds that have been paid to that policy consultant, so we have some idea of what that is costing us. Because I know that there are policies that go back and forth. We have questions, we send them back to them for clarification and updating. And I know that there are meetings, it sounds like there are meetings with administration and the Neola people. So I just like to have the big picture in terms of what is Neola costing us? What is that service costing us?
Is that okay, Stan?
Yes, we can do that. The other alternative is that we don't, we'd be taking a look at what the trade-off costs would be in both legal services as well as other, and that we couldn't generate because it hasn't occurred.
Exactly.
So, but we can certainly do that.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay. Any other future agenda items? All right. Announcements? Announcements. All right. We need to adjourn to executive session for the purposes of considering the disciplinary data of specific persons, 19.851F Wisconsin statutes. A, review expulsion recommendation from expulsion hearing officer for a high school student who engaged in conduct while at school or while under the supervision of a school authority which endangered the property, health, or safety of others, engaged in conduct which endangered the property, health, or safety of any, of any employee of school board member of the school district in which the pupil is enrolled, and engaged in conduct which constitutes repeated refusal or neglect to obey the rules 120.131 CE Wisconsin statutes. B, review expulsion recommendation from expulsion hearing officer for a high school student who engaged in conduct while at school or while under the supervision of a school authority which endangered the property, health, or safety of others, and engaged in conduct which endangered the property, health, or safety of any employee of school board member of the school district in which the pupil is enrolled, 120.131 CE Wisconsin statutes. And C, review expulsion recommendation from expulsion hearing officer for a high school student who engaged in conduct while at school or while under the supervision of a school authority which endangered the property, health, or safety of others, engaged in conduct which endangered the property, health, or safety of any employee of school board member of the school district in which the pupil is enrolled, and engage in conduct which constitutes repeated refusal or neglect to obey the rules 120.13 CE Wisconsin statutes.
So moved.
Second.
Call roll.
Garner.
Aye.
Garner, aye. Herzog.
Aye.
Herzog, aye. Olmsted.
Aye.
Olmsted, aye. Peschel.
Aye.
And Peschel, aye. Carlin.
Aye.
Carlin, aye. Eliason.
Aye.
Eliason, aye. Evans.
Aye.
Evans, aye. Motion carried.
Okay, this meeting's adjourned.